Welcome to another edition of the CJ McCollum Show. I'm currently recording live in the not-so-beautiful Los Angeles, California right now in the midst of monsoons, mudslides, and tropical rainstorms, eerily similar to what I experience on a day-to-day basis in Portland, Oregon, minus the mudslides. Very comforting sleep weather that I look forward to enjoying.
Did you just call all of LA soft for this historic storm they're going through?
No, you said that. I'm simply saying that they're so unused to the rain, although the rain was crazy the other day. I heard it was crazy.
It's a real deal.
I
hope you guys
today.
stay safe. Okay, that's good. But it's like the after effects. Hope you stay safe.
Yeah, this is the lighter version of it. It was bad the other day. My agent called me, and it looked like the sky was falling.
Yeah. And, you have a big matchup against red hot Clippers, too. So.
Oh, we do play the Clippers on this trip. That's right. They're pretty good.
Your whole clip from our podcast about, James Harden being a system. I'm still getting alerts about that.
I get notifications every day. Like, people either love James, hate James, or just hate the Clippers. I don't know what it is, but like every day I check my notifications. I'm like, this was like a week or two ago. Why are you guys?
It was like 3 weeks ago, but they're a hot topic. They are a hot topic right now because the Clippers are mad. Kawhi is playing out of his mind.
He's really good, really efficient. I think he's the first person in NBA history at, 30-game stretch of 50-50-90. It's impressive. I think the hardest part is the 90. The 50-50 is hard. Yes. The 50 from 3 is really hard, but for Kawhi, the 50 from 2 is just like, it's a normal walk in the park for him.
Right.
But to go 90 from the line over a 30-game span and 50 from 3 is tough, especially when you shoot threes off the dribble. That is extremely impressive stuff, Kawhi.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you're going to be, into that scouting report. You can't really share that much, but I think it's pretty easy to pinpoint what you guys are preparing for.
Yeah, I think we're preparing the same way all teams do. Like, this is a really good team. They're not what they used to be in terms of past years and the beginning of this season. They switch a lot. James is obviously the facilitator. He's the head of the snake in terms of, like, orchestrating the offense, running the pick and rolls, kind of letting everybody eat. Kawhi is Kawhi, right? He's in peak Kawhi form in terms of aggressiveness, efficiency, shooting the ball at a high clip. PG's playing a lot off the ball, getting a lot of catch and shoots, ISO, late clock threes, transition threes. He's hunting. Russ is coming off the bench playing with joy. I think he talked about it. He's happy. He's pushing tempo. They got a lot of different guys playing, roles they're comfortable in, roles they've adjusted to, and they're all thriving. Norman Powell is playing well, six-man candidate along with Russ. Like, they got Terrence Mann. They got the right pieces. Obviously, T. Lue. We talked about James being a system. It is T. Lue's system, so shout out to T. Lue for kind of getting things in order. But they're playing the best basketball in the NBA right now, especially in the Western Conference. They're playing the best basketball, and I would say Boston and Cleveland are playing the best basketball in the East. You look at their 30, since December or whatever, 25-5 or 26-5 over the last 31 games, which is nuts. That's crazy. That's like a Chicago Bulls pace.
You're just catching strays. Sorry, Bulls fans.
Like vintage Bulls pace, like when Jordan and them were there. Sorry.
Yes, but, now not so much. You mentioned, so they're on their way up. And, how long ago did all that, people freaking out about the fit with James when he first joined the team and Russ going to the bench? Like, that feels like an eternity ago, and they've really rounded into form. And, a lot of people are picking them to, be in their finals. No disrespect. But I when it comes to the East, you mentioned Cleveland, who's also on that quite a roll, and Boston. I had the 76ers in there as like a contender as well, but unfortunately the big news from last week into this week, Joel Embiid suffering that meniscus injury, Jonathan Kuminga falling on his left knee, which was already injured, He had an operation on Tuesday, and, it's all about the rehab and, how well he takes care of it. But they're going to reevaluate him in 4 weeks, and there's hope that he can come back this season. But, that is a big, big loss. He's leading the NBA in scoring. He was on track to, match Wilt Chamberlain's average of 35, 10, and 5. But the Sixers, they've lost, 6 of their last 7 games. What was your reaction to Joel Embiid's injury, news of his surgery? And, we saw LeBron's tweet, calling out people who were criticizing him for sitting out of, the Denver game. What's your overall reaction to a guy like that who was having a historic year, suffering this type of injury?
Yeah, it's very unfortunate to see something like that happen, especially to one of the faces of the league, one of the guys who means so much to this game, the international presence, the presence on Philly, the persona, the personality, the skill set. Like, he's so fun to watch because he scores so many different ways, right? 3-level scorer, got post-ups. He, modernized our game, but, still has that 7-foot, 300-pound flair of a big man that can still posterize and dunk on you. So it sucks to see something like this happen. And then, with the situation at hand in terms of people saying that, at first they were saying he's ducking smoke, he's not trying to play against Joker, or why is he missing games? And it's guys are missing games because there's something wrong, right?
Yeah.
He's obviously injured. He's obviously battling something. This is a guy who has had different types of injuries throughout his career that they've had to manage, accordingly throughout the season, where, at times they may have had scheduled rest days, whatever the case may be, back-to-backs, travel, certain things to kind of manage a guy who is obviously really important to this franchise and a guy who they want to be available when it really matters. The entire season matters, but the game really matters April, May, June, and that's what all teams are playing for, especially teams who are at the top of their conferences. So, when he goes down from an injury and then you hear about how he was battling a knee injury, was trying to play through it, it's frustrating because you understand what it's like as a player. You want to be out there. You want to compete at a high level, but obviously sometimes injuries take longer to heal, and when you are potentially battling something or nursing something, there is a higher risk for something else occurring maybe in that same area or a different area because of compensation. So when he got hit and diving for the loose ball and I seen him grab his knee, I just thought to myself, this can't be good. And sure enough, it's a situation where he's going to miss, a lot of time. And I think the reminder to everyone is just that guys really care. We hate rehabbing, right? It's the worst. One of the worst things that you can do as a player is rehab because your schedule shifts. You obviously aren't playing in games. You obviously aren't able to do the things you normally would do. And you can't do what you prepare for the entire summer, which is to play in front of a crowd and help your team win. So it sucks to see something like this happen, but I think it's just a reminder that guys are constantly battling things throughout an 82-game season, and sometimes they have to monitor accordingly and correctly, which means missing some games throughout a year.
I mean, look, I was in Denver for that matchup. He had hurt himself already in Indianapolis. And so I think just all of the events that kind of led up to it, him not being on the injury report to begin with, Ramona Shelburne's report that he wasn't going to be on it, and he wasn't, I think kind of added to the reaction of him showing, being ruled out 15 minutes before game time. I think that was a mistake to not just at least put him on the injury report. I mean, LeBron James is on every single injury report for that matter.
He's battling stuff constantly.
And so is Joel. But I think I'm not in this guy's head, and I'm not going to say that I know exactly what's going on, but it feels like, he wanted to make sure people knew that he wasn't trying to duck. He didn't want the reaction of him being on the injury report heading into that game. And then, I watched him in warm-ups, and his training staff was keeping a close eye on him, and he was laboring. So, how are we going to tell him that, he was fit to play? In this whole season, he's talked about all that matters is that I'm healthy for the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And yes, he was on pace for MVP again, but he won MVP already. So he checked that off the list, and he's been talking about it only matters if I win a title. And so this has been what's been his main focus. And so when so it's just an unfortunate series of events. So then, there's an investigation into, and a fine with the late notification. There's the new player participation rules, with guys sitting out, specifically national televised games, and if they're not listed on the injury report. And, I think with Joe, you wonder if he rushed himself back in reaction to, playing not like the criticism he received in Denver, and or just keeping up with the MVP race, because he was down to 6 games that he could miss after that Denver game, and then wondering if that had any impact, because the 65 game rule obviously is in the back of a lot of guys' minds, and when it comes to Joel Embiid or someone like Tyrese Haliburton, it's at the front of mind. So there's been a lot of chatter about that. You obviously were in those negotiations as the president of the Players Association. Tyrese voiced his opinion, calling the rules stupid. But the rule was implemented as a guideline for players to be eligible for certain awards. What can you tell us, just first, let's go here. What can you tell us about the negotiations that led to this rule, and the debate that's growing on whether it's fair and putting undue pressure on players?
Yeah, there was obviously a negotiation and a back and forth for years. This wasn't something that just happened this last year. This was years of back and forth and collaboration and conversations between the NBA, league offices, players, staff, organizations, obviously, and trying to figure out how to continue to improve our game. This isn't something that was put in place to make our game worse. This is something that has been thought out strategically, and obviously when you have situations like this, it looks horrible. And the point of the rule in general was to continue to promote players participating in games consistently when they're healthy. Like, the whole point is, when you're healthy, you play. It's not about playing through injuries. It's not about trying to get guys to do things they shouldn't do that are harmful for their bodies. That was all a part of the discussion, and if that's happening, then we failed in terms of what the messaging should be and how it should be for players and their teams. Like, I've been hurt, and I've played through injuries before just because I wanted to win, and I've done some things I probably shouldn't have done in terms of playing through stuff. And I think the whole point is, we don't want players resting that are healthy, especially in nationally televised games, especially when fans are participating in our sport in terms of spending their hard-earned money on attending our games. I think that was the whole point of it. And I think this all started, shout out to Pop, this all started with the Spurs back in the day when he used to rest multiple starters on nationally televised games, and then he began finding teams first and kind of like doing those types of things to kind of implement change. But in terms of the number of games and the discussion, it was a lot of back and forth, and we settled on 65, and we obviously voted on this amongst players. But I think that the thing that we're seeing right now is the conversations around Joel, obviously, Tyrese, and players kind of voicing the fact that they dislike this. And if you look at where the NBA was at before this rule was instituted, I think in order for you to be considered or qualify for points per game, rebounds per game, like the leading scorer of the NBA or whatever. What is it? I think it was 58 games, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's 58 games. So understanding the average time for certain injuries, right? You got ankle sprains. You got, what's the usual? Hamstring, ankle sprains. Those are the things that the guys generally miss the most games for outside of the COVID over the last 10 years, those are the injuries that guys miss the most time for. And those injuries are normally between 5 and 7 games, 8 and 12, depending on the severity. And sometimes you get that 15 or 20, depending on how bad or severe an injury is. But the point was to encourage players to play when healthy, not to encourage players to play when they're not. So if that's the messaging and how the rule is being utilized, then we failed. And I can admit that. So I think we got to kind of go back to the drawing board and have more discussions and kind of talk through it, because I think that's what it's about. It's about improving our quality of play in the game for all of us. Like, we don't want Embiid out there playing at 60, 70%. Like, that's not going to do anybody any good. And from a guy who's an MVP caliber player who could have won another MVP, him not being healthy is bad for our sport in general. Like, it's bad for our sport. The best players not being available is bad for our sport. It's bad for their teams, their markets, and their chances of achieving what we all hope to achieve over the course of our career, which is to compete for a championship and win one. And that's why we train. So that's the difficult part of all of this. And obviously, I'll continue to monitor the situation and speak to players and kind of get their feedback and figure out like what we can do better, because that's what it's all about. It's about learning. And if we miss the mark on something, we figure out how to adjust the mark and make it better. But one of the things that we're working on addressing is the fact that a lot of players feel like they're not able to accomplish certain things in terms of, financial gains, by missing some of these things. And we'll obviously kind of continue to monitor the CBA and go through the fine print to make sure that all the players are truly understanding exactly what's in it in terms of what they're entitled to in the event that a guy like Tyrese misses the mark on games played. This is a guy who's worthy of a full max, and like making sure that he still gets his full max is very, very imperative and important to us, and obviously important to him too. So we'll continue to monitor, and we'll make sure we're getting out the right messaging along with the right facts as to exactly what's in the CBA for those types of particular situations where not just a Joel Embiid situation, but a situation where a player maybe doesn't qualify for what he deserves because of games missed due to real injuries that kind of occur throughout a game. So this is obviously something that we're paying attention to. And as the season progresses and as the years progress, obviously there'll be different things that kind of happen that we have to address as players and as a member of the union.
Okay, so for Tyrese specifically, he's already missed 13 games this season. And he only played in 13 minutes in an early January game, which is where he got hurt. So it doesn't count towards the 65-game threshold. So does this mean, for him to earn reportedly that like extra $40 million over the life of his contract, like that's not really in jeopardy, or there's this it can be revisited?
Yeah, to my understanding, and I want to make sure I get the fine print and kind of go through it, with our legal team. There are situations in which, let's say he's hurt. Let's say he gets hurt again. Something happens. God forbid something happens. He misses the threshold, but he's obviously worthy of receiving the full max. There's situations and circumstances in which we can appeal, or whatever the case may be, go through insurance and assure ourselves the opportunity to seek the extra $40 million that he would be missing out on for not being a part of, an all NBA team, or whatever the triggers could be for him specifically. I know there are different triggers based on all-star, whether you make a first team, second team, third team, all NBA, like all those things kind of trigger bonuses, as we've seen from I think Jaylen Brown's contract and some of these guys' contracts in general. Making an all-star game could be the difference between an extra $1 million for somebody like, I think it was Julius Randle and Jaylen Brown, who in their contracts there's a fixed number, and then there's bonuses or incentives to where you can reach that full max of whatever that number is for you independently. But that's something that we'll definitely continue to revisit and look at and make sure we're putting things in place to protect our players from injuries, because we don't want guys playing through injuries, and we want everybody to receive the financial compensation they deserve, especially if they got hurt in the course of performing their duty and their job, which is to play the game. If you get hurt playing the game and you can't perform, that's one thing. Now, if you're just resting to rest, then that's a whole different situation that we're trying to kind of prevent from happening. But we obviously want to protect our players. We want our players to be able to play at a high level for our fans and for our teams and our cities and our families. And if we've missed the mark, then we got to revisit it.
All right, so we'll cross that bridge when we get there in terms of Tyrese Haliburton, because he's still eligible. But it is important, for voters, media members like myself, to understand that, like, if we get to a point where Tyrese Haliburton is quote unquote ineligible, I'm sure Players Association and the NBA will go into further detail on whether or not Tyrese Haliburton, should be eligible for us to put our votes in. But this is look, when a rule like this, as significant as it is implemented, even look at the in-season tournament, we talked about it. You gotta, this is something that the game's growth is at the center of, these new rules and new changes to the league. And so with that in mind, it's all about how can they improve, and how can, the Players Association improve, the league improve. So I assume that it will be discussed and hopefully, reevaluated, maybe even within the season. But, as you mentioned, Tyrese Haliburton already an all-star. So, there's something to that campaign for end of year awards, already reaching that milestone. And, All-Star Week is next week. We'll be recording a very special edition of the CJ McCollum Show, live from Indy. Well, not live to tape from Indy. But the, full lineups have been announced, including the injury replacements and Trae Young and Scotty Barnes filling in for Julius Randle and Joel Embiid. What do you think of the All-Star lineups? And who do you feel like are the biggest snubs? I know, clearly, I'm sure you feel some type of way that there should have been at least a Pelican. If not, you. But what are your overall feeling in terms of, when you look at the rosters, and how you feel that, it all played out?
I think this is an impossible job to have, just similar to the jobs that you have in terms of voting for first, second, third team All-NBA. There's always someone that's going to get left out that deserves to be in the game. Obviously, we got multiple players that I feel like should have played in the game. I'm sure the Sacramento Kings feel the same way, with the record that they have and the fact that they got 0 players in the game. But it's hard because there's only so many spots. You got a few guard spots, you got a few forward spots, and then you got the center position. And once you fill those roles, it begins to get harder and harder, especially when you include the fan voting and all those things associated with that. So it's tough to see certain guys like a Trae Young that gets left out but then gets added in late. A guy averaging 28 and 11, that's insane.
All right, who you play? We got to play that game though. Who would you have? Who would you have taken out?
I don't know. That's the thing. But you can just say that they were snubbed though. We could both agree that when you average that many points and that many assists, lead the league in 20-point, 10 assist doubles. It's hard to not justify a guy like De'Aaron Fox averages all those points on a team that's 8-9 games over 500. I don't know who you take out. Bea, the impact that they have on our teams, in our communities. All these guys are doing great work, and there's only 12 spots. It's tough. So I think everybody feels that way each year. And I think the hard part is figuring out what the criteria is. Is it the 12 best players? Is it 12 best players who impact winning on their teams? Is it record? What is constituted as an all-star? And I think that's the hard part, because I think each person in charge of voting has a different opinion of that. And then you got the players who vote, and then you get sometimes just random votes thrown in. But
right.
I think the whole point is we're all different individuals who think differently. So what we constitute as an all-star may be different in our own minds, which will affect the voting.
Right. Are you happy that they went back to East-West and got rid of the draft, or what do you have a feeling on that? I like the draft.
I like the draft too, but I think it was drawn out, and for the players that are participating, it takes a long time to announce each player. It's a long process, and as the guys get older, it's harder to kind of recharge and get loose for the game, and then the fans are watching, and it's a process that's cool, but I think it was slowing up the game a little bit.
Okay,
in terms
was
of the
that the
flow
reason? It just it felt like guys were was there like safety involved there, or just?
I think it's I think a combination. To be honest with you, I can't I am not an all-star, so I don't know what.
Or were guys complaining about the possibility of being picked last?
It seemed like a long process. I can't speak to the specifics, but it seemed like a long process. And I always joke, it doesn't matter if you're the last all-star or the first all-star, you're still an all-star.
Right.
Yeah. So.
I mean, wasn't Jokic picked last like 2 years ago?
Yeah, and he's the MVP, so it's like,
by arguably, the people's champ, the players' champ, like every single player calls him the best player in the league. So, all right, well, we'll see. I think I'm excited for All-Star. We'll get more into it next week. I think we're still waiting to find out. We're recording this on Tuesday night. Who's going to be in the dunk contest?
Do we
Saturday,
not know?
I don't know if it's been finalized unless
Jaylen Brown, Jacob Toppin.
Has it been? I saw last update I saw was this is the potential.
Oh, okay. I got the adjectives to describe what's taking place is very confusing to me.
well, because and that's the state of the dunk contest, though. It's like. Shout out to Jaylen Brown if he's really doing it.
If he's really doing it.
Because it's now become a place where some established guys don't want to embarrass themselves. Like they don't want to put themselves in a position to not do well. What about Trey? I don't
know. I can't speak to that.
he didn't stepping up to the dunk contest is like that. There's nothing like, I can't imagine, there's not a lot like that in the NBA where
it's a big deal.
Solo performance and everyone's looking for you to reinvent the wheel. And we've seen every single dunk. It's so hard. And then everyone's like, all right, well, let's bring in YouTube dunkers and open up the field, but no one's gonna watch that. They just want to watch the big stars dunk like we did back in the 80s and 90s.
It used to be a rite of passage.
It did.
To do the dunk contest. The stars did it. The best players in the world did it, and they competed at a high level. And I think it's lost its allure a little bit. And it's unfortunate because those dunk contests used to be really cool. And I think the best dunk contest ever.
But I will say, Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon.
That might be the best one I've ever seen.
So I I saw the Toronto one live. So that was
Vince.
What?
The
Toronto dunk contest with Zach and Aaron.
Yeah, I was there. I was in the stands.
Yes, to this day, it's still one of the greatest live events I've ever,
It's impressive.
Been to. But I don't know. Maybe these guys will surprise us. But I guess that was the start of, hey, let's get some budding new names and then they can establish themselves. Because reportedly, right, so Mac McClung's going to be back in it maybe. Jaylen Brown and Jaime Jaquez. I mean, if Jaime Jaquez, he's been great this year for Miami. I didn't know he had hops like that.
I've seen him do the behind-the-back dunk. He's got some creative dunks. He's got some sneaky bounce.
Look,
that I can attest to.
If they can put on a show, great. It's just hard to show people something new. And, we'll see. I'll be watching.
We'll be watching and hoping for the best.
I just think, you feel like Zach LaVine should have won both times against Aaron Gordon?
I don't know. That was a really, really good dunk contest, and AG, I think D-Wade messed him over on one of those votes. He messed him over. He messed him over. Shout out to my guy D-Wade. He messed him over on one of those votes.
Damian Lillard, you had some quotes about just stuff outside of basketball affecting him this season. Mm-hmm. He said, people say when I hoop, I ain't thinking about nothing. But I'm not 21. I got 3 kids. I'm tight with my family. I'm going through a divorce. So he was vulnerable and just explaining hi, I'm a person, I'm more than just playing basketball. And as someone who dealt with a lot at the beginning of this year with a new baby, like a very scary injury, like situations within the Pelicans and you guys trying to find your groove. Like, how do you, as a veteran who has so much going on, both on and off the court, like, how do you deal with work-life balance being in the league? And have you talked to Dame, just about what's going on with him and his, like, mental state with a lot going on in his life?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. We all have our own stuff that we deal with independently, whether that's life, family, personal, basketball, combination of all those things, finance. There's so many things that, we're going through and trying to balance while literally getting on a plane every 3 or 4 days. So it's frustrating at times, but I think it's about having the right circle of people around you that you trust, having the right professional help, and really kind of honing in on what's important, trying to figure out what's really important to you, what really matters to you, and how are you going to protect that. And I think once you kind of figure that out, the decisions that you make around your life become easier. They become more clear. And there's some things that are going to happen that you have no control over. And I think it's more so how you respond to it. But he's spoken to the personal things that he's battling, involving his personal life, which is, now become public as a public figure, which is unfortunate. But when you have kids, man, I think it makes your life that much better, but it also can bring some challenges in your life in terms of balance. You wanting to be around, but having to travel and missing things. And obviously, as someone who's married with 2 kids, it's a hard work-life balance working any job, especially this job. So it's just about continuing to push forward and having healthy conversations and dialogue and communication and really carving out safe, healthy boundaries for yourself and for your lifestyle and for your family's lifestyle, because this life can be very difficult. It can be very strenuous. You're performing on a big stage consistently, and no matter what you're going through personally, people don't care. They just want to see you perform at a high level, and that can be tough. But Dame and I still talk constantly and checking on him, make sure he's doing okay. And this is a tough transition, family-wise for him personally, and then obviously being in a new city has taken its toll and really challenged him in ways he probably hasn't been challenged before. But he's a strong individual, and he's handling things properly.
Yeah, I mean, this league is so hard. There is so much talent that, you can argue that the mental edge can sometimes be what separates you. And if there's distractions or obstacles, in the way of, like, being able to devote the focus to beat out someone's other mental edge, it's just, I guess bottom line is, do we feel like fans take this for granted? Yes, of course, like you said, but this is a performance-based job that, the NBA is watching entertainment. And so we see this with actors, we see this with musicians. Like, it can, you never know how someone is entering into the space that they're expected to perform in, and you can't expect it to be the same each and every day, because that's not what being human is. And I think what's another interesting kind of mental battle is the battle of against Father Time, if you will. You've been in the league for a while, CJ, but, like, you're not there yet where you're really facing, thoughts of when you're going to be retiring. But this is something that, like, or that you've taken a step back. If anything, you've done the opposite. What we're seeing with Klay Thompson right now, with the Warriors, is, he's having to answer a lot of questions about his decline in play, and then, kind of making room for the development of the younger players. And recently, he was asked when his role changed and not be included in, the end of game. He said, if it's been an adjustment, he said, "You kidding me? You go from, one of the best players. It's hard for anyone. It's very hard." And, I had a conversation with Steph Curry, who's still playing at a prime right now. Just how hard it is for that unit who's won together and has been so synonymous with, the Warriors' success and dynasty, how it is with him and, with Draymond's suspension and Klay, having to answer questions of him being in and out of the starting lineup, like how that feels, kind of coming to grips with their mortality. And he's just like, it's got to be an open conversation. Like, the communication has to happen. I don't want to get you into that mentality because you're still yeah. You're still at a high, but like, have you thought about, what it's going to be like when you do feel like you're just not the same player?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think even in reading Klay's quote, he feels good physically. Yeah. Mentally. I think that's the sign, right? Like, mentally, he's starting to drift. He's starting to question things. And obviously, he's had the injuries. He's had the role shift in terms of his usage, how he's being utilized at the end of games. All those things are kind of affecting him. But it all comes back to the basics of Klay's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the greatest players to ever shoot a basketball. And no one's ever going to forget that. It's important that he doesn't forget that as well. And I think as he continues to maneuver this journey and whatever that journey takes him and wherever that journey takes him, it's important that you keep that sanity and that understanding of who you are as a person, as a player. And if you can maintain that piece, then the game is what it is. It's just a game. It's a game you've mastered. It's a game you have over 10,000 hours of playing, and there's going to be great nights and bad nights, but it's about understanding that. That's a very, very important thing to understand in this sport and in this life is you can't control a lot of things, but you can control how you react to them. And I think the contract situation, I think there's a lot of things that are playing into, why we're seeing this version of Klay. But the skills are still there. The talent is still there. The physical being that he was and is still there. It's just about tapping into that mental side of it. But I haven't gotten to that point. I think mentally I'm where I need to be, and when I'm not, that's when I step away.
Well, you're not stepping away anytime soon because, you've been great this season. Let's get a little wrap things up with the Pelican brief. You guys have improved to 29 and 21, coming off some big wins. What's the temperature on the team right now as you're on this West Coast trip, about to take on the Clippers and then the Lakers, who are trying to figure things out as well?
Yeah, we're in a weird part of the season where there's less than half the season left. It's the trade deadline, it's All-Star break looming, and we've been on the road a lot lately with one home game in between. So it's just about continuing to stick to what you do, preparation-wise, understanding how you got to take care of your body during this part of the season, eat right, sleep right, hydrate properly, pick your treatment days, pick your workout days wisely, and coach kind of figuring out strategically when we should practice, when we shouldn't. But I think we're in a good spot, on pace for about 48 wins, in seventh place with a chance to get upward, mobility of 6 or 5 and kind of hang out around there and then try to go on runs and beat teams under 500, steal games on the road and compete against the likes of the Clippers and some of those, upper echelon teams in the conference, and then that positions you well for playoffs. But I'd say that we're in a good space. Offensively, we're playing well. We're shooting a lot of threes. Bea had a great game the other night. Defensively, we're locking up, and for us, it's just about consistently doing the right things and having the right habits to be successful now and later in the season.
So will you do the dunk contest?
I will not. I will not be doing the dunk contest or the three-point contest this year. I have some things I need to take care of with my family.
Okay, but can you also just try to do the dunk contest?
They don't want me in that dunk contest. They don't want me.
You'd be a name that
Yeah, name, but we don't want the name. We want the dunks, the good dunks.
What would be your go-to dunk?
I mean, I dunk through the legs and stuff, but it's just you've seen it a million times. So it's like, why? Like I'm not that guy. Like,
have you ever done a dunk contest in your life?
No, not a
Not
real
even
one.
when you were younger.
No, in the driveway, but that's it. It doesn't count.
I'm just trying to add more names to the dunk contest. I guess we do know Jaylen Brown, Mac McClung, Jacob Toppin, Jaime Jaquez Jr. I'm not mad at it.
Yeah. It'll be very interesting watching. We can't wait, so we hope everybody tunes in and watches.
Everyone will, yeah.
And we hope everybody
Also watch the All-Star Celebrity Game because that's what's on ESPN.
Exactly, and continue to listen to the CJ McCollum Show and take care of your mental health. It's very important.
Absolutely. Enjoy LA.
I will.
Hope you have a good umbrella.
Umbrella, Ella.
No, we didn't need all that. Okay, bye.
Hey.